I've asked the past couple weeks for all of us to think about what are we hoping for? What are we holding fast to in the midst of the chaos of a pandemic, of lost jobs, of lost loved ones, of struggling to reconcile what's going on in our world right now and some of the very challenging and difficult conversations that are happening? And as we've been talking about this virtue of hope, as we've been unpacking what it means to hold on to the promises that God has given us about His kingdom, which we are promised, I can't help but think about all the people that Jesus encountered in the scriptures, the men and women that He met face to face, who walked away from Him radically different than they were before they had met Him. We talked about Andrew and John in the desert meeting Him for the first time and hearing those words, "Come and see." We talked about Mary and Martha, who welcomed Him over for dinner, and one makes herself busy with cooking and the other sits down at the feet of Jesus, but yet both are necessary because they both approach the Lord in a different way, which is revealed to us later on when He shows up to bring their brother Lazarus back to life. We could continue to dive into the other people that Jesus meets, the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman who He offers living water to, or the little girl who is brought back to life. "Little girl, I say to you, arise," and everyone in the room is shocked because Jesus has miraculously healed her. We could talk about Nicodemus up in the tree, or the rich young man who walks away sad. We could talk about all these different named and unnamed men and women who had this authentic encounter with Jesus Christ, who hear the truth, who encounter Him in a new way, and who hear His voice, and their lives are never, ever the same. Peter Kreeft, one of my favorite philosophers and authors, wrote a book called Jesus Shock. I highly, highly recommend it, where he basically talks about how Jesus Christ coming into the world not only changed the world, but it changed our individual lives, and that an encounter with Jesus Christ is an encounter that is life-changing precisely because you meet the way, the truth, and the life itself. And that if when you meet Jesus Christ, your life isn't changed, then in fact it was not Jesus that you met. I think that is really a summation of what it means to be a person of hope. That you have hope in the Jesus Christ that you met. That you have hope in the one who has said true things and has made good on His promises. The biggest, of course, being, in 3 days I will raise the temple back up, and He resurrects from the dead. The promise that He makes to all of us, to every single one of us, that we'll never be alone, that we'll never be orphaned, that there's promise in His kingdom. And we can see ourselves in all of these stories. We can see ourselves as the woman at the well. We can see ourselves as Andrew and John in the desert. We can see ourselves in Martha and Mary welcoming people to the house and not quite knowing when to sit down and be still. We can see ourselves in all of these different moments of encounter. But there's one story that I see myself the most in. And I think it's the one that actually offers the most hope. It's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8. Jesus is traveling, and as we've talked about before, Jesus was a man on the move. And in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is going to all these different places, and He's preaching, and He's teaching, and He's healing, and he's doing His Jesus thing. And He shows up in this town, and He finds, it's a pretty big city, and He finds out that there is a man there who is possessed by demons. A man who is completely and totally off his rocker. And the people in town are terrified of him because he's possessed by demons. And they're so scared of him, and they're so nervous about what he might do, that they relegate him to living amongst the tombs. This man is not allowed to live in town. He doesn't have a house. He doesn't have a family. He doesn't have a job. He literally lives at the cemetery among the dead. And Jesus hears about this man in this big city. And so he goes and he finds him. Goes and he finds this man who we just know as the Gerasene demoniac. In my heart, I like to call him Gary. He goes and he finds this man, and it says in the Gospels that he's bound with chains and shackles to restrain him. So this guy is strong and he's big and he's super possessed. Like, he is really, really sick with these demons. And Jesus walks right up to this man, fearless, our Lord is. He walks right up to this man possessed by demons, and he looks at him and he says, "What is your name? What is your name?" Now, the logical interpretation of this passage, of course, is Jesus wants to know the name of the demons possessing this man, because when he knows the names of the demons, he's able to command power over those demons and cast them out, right? That's the logical explanation. But that's also a very simple, basic question of getting to know you. What's your name? I'm Katie. What's your name? It's nice to meet you. In some sense, this moment that Jesus is trying to gain mastery over the demons is also a moment where he's almost humanizing the man, reminding him that he is somebody worth knowing, even if he's possessed by demons, even if he's been shackled and chained, even if he's been living amongst the cemetery. The man looks at Jesus and he replied, "Legion," because many, many demons were inside of him. Legion is not just a name, it was a number. A legion of Roman soldiers was 10,000 Roman soldiers. So this man is very ill, he's very possessed, he's very scary. And Jesus is able to cast those demons out. Through the power of God, he's able to cast the demons out. The demons end up in this swine herd. The swine fall off the side of the hill. And this man who's been possessed and locked away and hidden and kept from people and very, very ill for all these years, all of a sudden this man is no longer wailing and thrashing and yanking on his chains. He's still. He's at peace. He's been healed. And Jesus and the man, they sit down together and they start to talk. We don't have a record of the conversation in the Gospels. We just know that the people in town found out that this man that they had, locked away amongst the cemetery was all of a sudden healed. And so they rushed to the edge of town to find out, well, what happened? Our neighborhood-friendly demoniac has been healed. What happened? And they get to the edge of town and they find Jesus sitting there with the man. And it says in the Gospel of Luke that as they approached, the man was sitting there clothed and in his right mind. They saw this man who for years had been thrown aside and forgotten and feared, clothed and in his right mind. And Luke, the Gospel of Luke, remember, is written by a physician, a man who is very analytical. Everything is in chronological order. He's very specific about details. He gives us that little detail, that the man is in his right mind and he's clothed. He's clothed, which indicates to us that maybe when he wasn't in his right mind, he was naked, which means that I have a question. Where did those clothes come from? It's not like Jesus carries around a suitcase or did a quick trip to Target. We can probably logically assume that Jesus took the cloak off his own back and wrapped it around this sick, possessed man who was healed and gave him a little bit of his dignity back, restored within him a sense of worth and value, if even for just those first few moments that he was in his right mind again. Now, this is the part of the story that I think is worth unpacking, especially in thinking about the concept, the virtue, the lived reality of hope coming alive. And it's just very simply this. If we are people of hope, if we are people who believe in the promises that have been made to us by God, if we truly believe that we are called to live in the kingdom of heaven in the next life, and to rejoice when our loved ones go to that kingdom themselves, well, we hold on to those promises. We cling to those realities. We know those truths are true because we also have encountered the Christ who looks us in the eye and asks us our name and sits down with us and gives us the cloak off his back, the God who provides. When we cling fast to hope, when we hold on to it, when we know it's true and we share that with other people, it's because we have a story, because we know that we have been provided for before. We've sat down and the cloak off his own back was wrapped around our shoulders. Oftentimes I think we look for grandiose moments where God does something profound, like heals us of demons or cures us of cancer or delivers the job that we wanted or immediately takes care of this temporal problem that's right in front of us. And that certainly happens. But oftentimes the providence of God is very small and very subtle and almost sometimes even slow, but always intentional and personal. And a providence that is revealed to us in loving and tender ways. Jesus gives this man the cloak off his back. When he raises that little girl from the dead and he says, "Little girl, arise," the first thing he says is, "Get her something to eat. She's hungry." Right? Jesus cares for the particular person and their particular need in that particular moment. Hope is not some general thing and oh, God is good. It's hope in the God who knows me individually, particularly, and personally. And he will provide for me, even when I maybe think there's nothing worth providing for. The other aspect of the story of this man possessed by demons, if you've been told you're worthless, if you've been made to live amongst the tombs, possessed by the demons who are tormenting you, forgotten by the town, ignored by the people you probably once worked with and loved, you might begin to think of yourself as worthless, as having no value, as needless, as unnecessary, as unwanted. And that's perhaps the worst thing that a person can feel. Of all the emotions, of all the ways that we can feel, feeling unwanted and unloved and unneeded is perhaps the worst. Because it's this grappling with value, it's this understanding of self as unnecessary. It's feeling as if there's no place or no space or no purpose or meaning for you. And people need purpose and meaning in life. People long to be meaningful. People long to be valued. If we really believe that hope comes alive, hope is alive, that hope is given to us and hope is fostered within our hearts by the God who promises us nothing but good things, well, that hope stems from this understanding that I'm first made in his image and likeness and am valued and loved in his eyes. I'm valued and loved in his eyes because I'm made in his image and likeness. I deeply believe in praying through the Gerasene demoniac story many, many times that when Jesus and this man sat down and started to have a conversation and Jesus gave him the cloak off his back, that as they began to chat, that the dignity that was restored to that man's life in that moment was the fact that Jesus took the time to see him, to get to know him, to love him, not just by providing, all right, you're free from these demons, but to provide him with his time. We always want to know, how do I share hope? How do I tell people I'm hopeful? Do I just say, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful in the resurrection. I'm hopeful in the gospel. I'm hopeful that God will provide for me. Well, that's not a very convincing testimony. Perhaps the way we share hope is that we show people that, well, I have hope because I know I am loved by him. I have hope because I know he cares for my heart and my mind and my body. I have hope because I've sat across from Christ himself, who's looked at me and said, "What is your name?" And then given me precisely what I needed, which is first and foremost attention and time to know that I'm valued. Now, the people of this town show up into the desert that afternoon and they see their neighborhood-filling demoniac healed, clothed, and in his right mind, and they have the reaction that you would probably expect. They are freaked out. They don't understand how this happened. How did this guy who said these nice things in our town all of a sudden show up and heal this man miraculously? Oh my gosh, it must be demons themselves. You have to leave. We don't get it, because people are fearful of things that are different or that they don't understand. And so they're ready to kick Jesus out of town. And we all know Jesus, right? Jesus knows when he's not welcome. Jesus knows when he needs to leave. And so Jesus is packing up his stuff and he's hopping in the boat and he's going to the next place, and he's not going to stay where he's not wanted. And this man who he's just healed, well, this man wants to go with him. Can you blame him? I mean, all these people in town hated him. So of course he probably wants to go with Jesus. That makes the most sense. Go with Jesus, become an apostle, go spread the gospel. You now have a really cool story. Might as well go with the Lord. And Jesus looks at him and he says, no, you can't come with me. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, come on, Jesus, you can always use more guys. A 13th apostle will really come in handy come Judas betraying you time, right? But the crazy thing is that Jesus doesn't say, no, I don't need you to go, with me, just because he wanted the man to just go back to his normal old life. Jesus looks at the man and he says, you can't come with me. I want you to go home and tell your friends what the Lord has done for you. Go home and tell your friends what the Lord has done for you. He gives the man he just healed, who everybody hated and is probably still a little freaked out by, he gives the man a job. Go tell people about me. Go tell people what I've done. Go tell people how your life has been changed. Go evangelize. Go testify to hope. You might be thinking, like I did one of the first times I read this story, that's not going to go very well. Right? A degree and a fancy camera and some name recognition is totally what you need to spread the gospel, right? This man had been possessed by demons. This man had been hated by his town. Why would he have any sort of authority to go talk about Jesus, other than the fact that he's had a pretty profound encounter with Jesus, which is really all you need to be able to talk about him. And he goes back into that town and he preaches and he teaches, and it says that the people were amazed at these proclamations that he gives. So amazed, in fact, that when Jesus is back in this town just a few chapters later, those people of the town run to him and they bring him a man who's ill, and they say, heal him the same way you did the other one. Which means that the person who evangelized this whole city was a man possessed by demons, naked and afraid in the desert, met by the power of Jesus Christ, healed through the divine power of God himself, and compelled to go give that good news to other people. Don't ever think you're not qualified, and don't ever think you're not worthy, because a dude possessed by demons converted a whole town and convinced them that Jesus Christ is who he says he is, and gave them hope in what he says he will do. Here at the end of our parish mission, of these Mission Mondays, we've been unpacking this virtue of hope. I've asked you to think about a few different things. Think about your encounters with Jesus Christ. Think about the promises that have been made true in your life. Think about what you are hopeful for, what you long for and desire in your life. And right now, I want you to think about those moments when you have felt alone and afraid and cast aside. And Jesus Christ has met you in those moments and seen you and provided for you. And how are you going to go home and tell your friends and your family and your coworkers and your neighbors and perfect strangers you fight with on the internet? How are you going to tell them what the Lord has done and bring hope to life for them? Anytime my daughter, who's, only 2.5, almost 3, has good news, she can't keep it in. A new toy, a new dress, a discovery of a new show on Disney Plus. Right? She will tell whoever she bumps into at the grocery store or on a family walk. She'll tell. Just the other day, we were taking a walk through our neighborhood. We just put a new collar on our dog a few days before. She saw the sweet lady that lives across the street who sits on her porch and waves at us, and she shouted out to her, Barney got a new collar. Right? It was good news to her. That lady needs to know my dog has a new collar. Every person we pass, and we have a pretty friendly neighborhood with people sitting on their front porches or taking walks themselves, everybody up and down Wedgwood Street knows that Barney has a new collar. Because to her, that was worth sharing. To this man possessed by demons, it was worth sharing what the Lord had done for him. What is worth sharing to you? What in your life has happened that will compel you to share the hope that is alive in your heart? What needs to be said? What story must be told? What do you yourself need to reflect upon In those moments when you've sat and Jesus has clothed you and he's taken care of you and he's held you and he's loved you, even in your deepest sadness or your greatest fear. My hope for you, as we wrap up this time together on Monday evenings, is that you would, A, spend some time reflecting with those passages we've read through. The come and see moment from the Gospel of John, the Martha and Mary story, contemplating how we can sit and be in the presence of Christ, and this story of the Gerasene demoniac, a man healed by the power of God himself. And ask yourself, who do I identify with the most? Am I standing in the desert waiting for the invitation? Am I bringing Jesus into my house and forgetting to take the time to sit with him? Am I alone in a desert by myself, terrified and afraid, feeling worthless and unvalued? Where am I? And how is Jesus Christ coming to me and preaching to me and loving me and showing me the hope that only he can bring? I don't have all the answers on specifically what hope looks like, because hope alive is different for every single person. For me, I have hopes in the healing of loved ones who are ill, hopes for a successful rest of this pregnancy and a healthy baby at the end of September, hopes that our world gets better rather than sicker in the midst of this pandemic, hope that my daughter finds friends when she starts school in August, hope that this parish mission was fruitful for you. We all hold on to different things, but our ultimate hope, of course, is in the promise of the resurrection. The promise that Jesus Christ has defeated death. The promise that I will be with him in heaven someday if I long for that in this life and strive to be holy. The hope that Christ alone can give and can bring to life, and that I am called to share with others. Where's your hope? And how are you holding fast to it? And are you just hearing those words, come and see? Is he sitting in your living room and you're trying to take time to be with him? Are you out in the desert, healed and ready to go proclaim and to teach? Wherever you are on that journey, hope, hopefully, is alive in your heart and is ready to be shared with all that you meet. I'm so thrilled and excited that we've had this opportunity to gather and to pray together. Here at the end, I want to just quickly share with you that next week, next Monday, in the evening, and the times will be posted in your parish Facebook group and website and sent out in the ways that you're communicating, a gathering together to just hang out on a live Zoom call, to do some Q&A time for about half an hour, to just have a cup of coffee with one another and laugh and listen. You know, normally at a parish mission at the end of every night, I would be standing in a Narthex selling books or shaking hands and hearing who you are and where you are and what you're doing. And that's one of my favorite parts. And so we wanted to duplicate that a little bit by gathering together on the Zoom call. So again, the link will be shared from all of your parish communications staff, and you'll be able to hop on next week and just spend some time chatting about our hope, about our joy, about what we're looking forward to, and about how the Lord has spoken to us maybe in a unique way these past few weeks. I'm grateful that you joined us. I'm grateful that you prayed through these scripture passages with me, that you listened and that you tuned in. Please know that I am praying for you. Thanks for watching.